The classroom was suffocatingly quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, but instead makes every student's chest tighten with invisible pressure. The large clock ticked on the back wall, each second echoing like a drumbeat inside the heads of 30 nervous students. They all sat upright, books open, pencils neatly placed on the desks, eyes locked on their notebooks or the floor. Anywhere except on the tall, intimidating man pacing at the front of the room. Mr. Kruger, the math teacher, had a reputation so fierce it traveled faster than the school's morning announcements. No one dared to breathe too loudly in his class. He had made his rules clear on the very first day. "No one speaks in my class! Not a word unless I demand it." Today was no different. He walked slowly between the rows, tapping a ruler against his palm as though waiting for someone to slip, waiting for a single word to slip out of trembling lips so he could pounce. The students knew the consequences: humiliation, extra assignment, sometimes even a sharp insult that left them too afraid to open their mouths again. In this room, math wasn't just about numbers, it was about obedience, survival, and enduring 60 minutes of suffocating silence. But today wasn't like every other day. Today, a new student sat in the back row by the window, a girl whose presence had already unsettled the usual rhythm of fear. Her name was Leela. She had transferred from another city just last week, and though she looked fragile and quiet, there was something about the way she held her posture, her shoulders firm, her eyes steady, that suggested she wasn't like the others. While most kids in the room avoided looking up, Leela's eyes had met Mr. Kruger's gaze more than once, and instead of lowering her head, she had stared back calmly, as though measuring him. The room felt heavier as Mr. Kruger cleared his throat. "Open your textbooks to page 142. We are solving quadratic equations." His voice was harsh but controlled. He wrote the first problem on the board, his chalk screeching. The sound made some students flinch. "Who will solve this?" he asked, scanning the room. Not a single hand rose. No one even dared to make eye contact. It was always the same. Students were terrified of being wrong in front of him. Mr. Kruger smirked bitterly. "Pathetic. 30 students and not one brain among you." His words stung, but no one reacted. That was his weapon, humiliation. Then a sound broke the silence, a soft voice, clear, calm. "The answer is -3 and +4. Every head turned in slow motion, eyes widened. The air seemed to leave the room. No one ever spoke out of turn in Mr. Kruger's class, and yet here was the new girl, Leela, her hand not even raised, her voice steady, announcing the solution as though she owned the floor. Mr. Kruger froze mid-step. His eyes narrowed, his ruler smacked loudly against the desk nearest to him, making the boy sitting there jump in fear. "Who?" he growled. "Just spoke in my class without permission." All heads swiveled back to the window row. Leela sat there, her chin lifted slightly, her expression unreadable. "I did," she said. "And the answer is still -3 and +4. The silence that followed was so intense it felt deafening. A storm brewed in Mr. Kruger's face. No one had ever challenged his rule before. "You dare break my rule. You dare speak when I said no one speaks," he barked. "Yes," Leela replied simply. "Because silence doesn't solve problems. Thinking does. And I thought so, I answered." The room erupted in whispers, students exchanging stunned looks. Was she insane? No one talked back to Mr. Kruger. "No one! Quiet!" Mr. Kruger thundered. He marched toward Leela's desk, the sound of his shoes striking the floor like war drums. He towered over her, his shadow swallowing her entire desk. "Stand up," he demanded. Leela rose, but not timidly. She stood slowly, deliberately, until her eyes met his. Despite the massive height difference, it was Mr. Kruger who felt, for the first time in years, slightly unsettled. Her gaze wasn't frightened. It wasn't defiant either. It was steady, like she was holding a truth bigger than him. "You think you're clever," he spat. "You think you can walk into my class and break my rules." "No," Leela said softly, but her voice carried. "I don't think I'm clever. I think I'm free. And I don't believe learning should feel like prison." The words hit harder than a slap. The students gasped audibly. One boy's jaw literally dropped. The ruler in Mr. Kruger's hand trembled slightly. He wasn't used to being challenged, and certainly not by a student, a new student who hadn't yet been conditioned by fear. For a moment, the classroom stood at the edge of an invisible cliff, teetering. Mr. Kruger could lash out, could double down on his authority, and crush her spirit in front of everyone. Or he could acknowledge something inside her words that even he, deep down, knew was true. But pride was a dangerous thing, his face darkened, veins standing out at his temples. "Detention!" he roared. "For the rest of the week! And if you ever, EVR, speak without my permission again, you will regret stepping foot in my class." He slammed the ruler on her desk with such force that it cracked slightly. But Leela didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She didn't break eye contact. Instead, she leaned forward ever so slightly and whispered, but loudly enough for every corner of the room to hear, "Fear doesn't make you a teacher. Respect does." The room shook with silence again. Students could hardly believe the courage, or madness, of what they had just witnessed. Leela sat back down, calmly opened her notebook, and began writing as though nothing had happened. For the rest of the lesson, Mr. Kruger's fury boiled, but he didn't call on anyone. He didn't even continue pacing. He stood stiffly at the front of the board, muttering equations under his breath, while stealing occasional glances at the girl who had dared to speak. Something had changed in that room forever, and though most students didn't say a word, their eyes followed Leela, wide with admiration. For the first time, someone had cracked the iron silence that ruled their lives. The bell rang, and students hurried out, buzzing with whispers about what had just unfolded. Some were terrified for Leela, convinced she had destroyed her chances at surviving in this school. Others, though, felt a spark in their chests they hadn't felt before. Hope. Maybe Mr. Kruger wasn't unbreakable after all. Maybe silence wasn't their only option. Leela packed her things slowly, ignoring the eyes that watched her. She could feel the shift in the air. She had not just spoken a line, she had flipped something much bigger, and Mr. Kruger knew it too.